Hey guys, it's Denise from LoomaHat.com, and in this video we're going to learn how to knit a swatch and why. Let's start with the definition of the word swatch. Well, according to Google, it's a small sample of a fabric intended to demonstrate the look of a larger piece. In other words, it's a test run. So how do we loom knit a swatch? Well, it starts with some choices. You need to choose a project, a loom, yarn, and if you're following a particular pattern, it's best to just use the ones that the designer recommends. The loom doesn't have to be the same brand, but it should be the same size, and your yarn should be the same weight. And here's a scary concept. You need to know which version of the knit stitch. In case you didn't know, there are actually 4 versions, and picking the wrong one is going to make a huge difference in your project. We're talking size and look. Extremely different. The 3 little hats in this picture are made with the same pattern, on the same loom, with the same yarn. The only difference is the version of the knit stitch. Once you're done with your choices, the next thing is to then knit up your little sample of fabric. If you're not using a pattern, then, just take a guess. Don't worry about it. It's just a swatch, so you're not hurting anything. If I take the Rambler stitch as an example, then according to the pattern, I need 24 stitches and 42 rows to get a 4 by 4 inch square. In my particular case, I can decide to just knit up 2 inches, so I would do half the number of stitches and half the number of rows. In loom knitting, gauge is determined by the space between one peg and the other. Keep in mind that the size of your gauge will also have an effect on the size of your swatch. Your next step is to measure your fabric to see if it did come out exactly as expected. In my case, I wanted 2 inches in stitches and in rows. If your sample doesn't measure correctly, you may need to change your loom, your yarn, your knit stitch, or your tension. Let me give you some of the reasons why I knit swatches. The main one, of course, is to make sure that you've got the size correct for wearables like sweaters and things of that sort. I also want to see if the stitch curls. How does it look on the reverse side? It helps me decide on my cast on and my bind off, and of course it lets me see the overall look and feel of the stitch, and also it helps me customize my project. You may be asking, how am I going to use a swatch to help me customize a project? Well, say I see a stitch that I like. For instance, the mat crochet on a hat, but I want to turn it into a scarf. Well, in order to do that, I have to have some specific information about the mat crochet stitch, such as the information I just told you. After that, all that's left is to do the math, and here's an example of that formula for you. Alright, I hope you learned how and why to knit a swatch, and if you liked the video, like it, comment, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe.